All right, everybody. Good morning. I have 11:59, so we're coming up on that 12 o'clock noon time for us to listen and learn about college planning from Allison Schaberg. I want to take a couple of minutes to introduce myself, introduce Allison, address some housekeeping issues. Allison, it's great to have you back again. We always get such great information, and our parents always compliment and love the fact that you are presenting for us. My name, excuse me, my name is Christy Balraj, and I'm the regional coordinator for Partners Resource Network. I cover the Fort Worth area, Tarrant County area, down into Hood, Somerville, Erath County. But we do have regional coordinators all over the state. We are the Parent Training and Information Center for the state of Texas. So if you have any questions or concerns regarding school and getting services for your child in school or anything of that nature, don't hesitate to reach out. I know Allison has put her contact information in the chat, and I will do the same here shortly. I want to let everyone know, in case you just joined us, that this webinar is being recorded. Also, if you have questions for Allison directly as she's going through her presentation, please put those in the Q&A section for me. I know sometimes you chat back and forth with each other and asking each other questions, and that's fine. But if you have specific questions for Allison, please put that in the Q&A so I can make sure that we get you answers. And in the event that Allison doesn't get to your question, I always forward her the questions so that she or someone on her staff can reach out to you and make sure your question gets answered. At the end, we will be launching a poll for feedback, evaluation feedback. So we would appreciate it if you could take a few minutes to complete that poll when Allison is done. And other than that, Allison, I'm turning it over to you. Thanks for being here again.
Absolutely. Thanks, Christy. It's always a pleasure to be back with you and Partners Resource Network. We do a lot of webinars with partners all across the state of Texas. So nice to be in your region. So as you said, Allison Schaberg, Consolidated Planning Group. If you're joining us for the first time on one of our webinars, we're really glad you're here. And if you are what we call a serial attender, you attend a lot of our webinars, we're glad you're back. So let me just kind of give a brief overview. Sometimes I feel like I'm a broken record, but so I come to you as owner of Consolidated Planning Group, and Consolidated Planning Group, we're a holistic special needs planning firm. But I come to you as, a parent. I wear a lot of hats, but I come to you as a parent to 4, 2 kids with special needs, 2 kids that have transitioned into adulthood. One that I would say we're transitioning. We're over 18. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. And so today I'm excited to talk to you about this topic, college planning for special needs, because I know that when my older daughter was kind of going through this, I felt like a mad woman, like of all the stuff that you have to know this when it comes to college planning. Whether you have a child and it's neurotypical going to college, or you have a child with special needs, I think it's a big job no matter what, because a lot of the way things work in the college system, it's not cohesive, meaning basically when it comes to colleges and universities, all of them march to the beat of their own drum for deadlines, for applications, there's just so many things to know, and that it's different for every single one of those colleges and universities out there. So today I hope to share with you a lot about what I learned along the way and kind of what programs are out there. And then certainly if and any additional resources that we talk about in today's meeting, she said it would be being recorded, but we are also going to share our slides today. So any links where we're talking about scholarships or funding or other things that you should be aware of, you're going to get those, so you don't have to take endless notes or anything like that. So okay, so first things first, when we're thinking about higher education for our kids with disabilities, I think it's first and foremost, I always talk about keeping an open mind and considering all options. And so a lot of times what we see is some of our kids with disabilities, maybe from a maturity standpoint, aren't quite there yet. From a maturity standpoint, to be able to go away to college, maybe they can handle a community college. Maybe they're going to stay in the public school system until 21 or 22. And so we like to talk about there's no comparisons. They aren't behind. They are where they are. And so this is a message. So, you know, I say I roll here, you know, but sometimes as parents, we have to tell ourselves this because the comparisons start early. It starts in preschool. It starts, you know, when did he walk? When did he talk? When did, you know, does he know his times tables? I mean, there's all these little things, these comparison where we're always comparing our kids and how do they play sports, you know, who's better and that kind of stuff. And I think that puts a lot of unnecessary pressure on us as parents and also unnecessary pressure on these kids because they really aren't behind. They are where they are and it's totally okay. So thinking about a non-traditional path versus a traditional path, some of the things that we might be thinking about is transition programs. Some of these transition programs are going to be through your public school. Some of the private schools have transition programs. And then there's also transition programs throughout your community. So wherever you might be in the state, I know that we're kind of in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but a lot of times other people kind of tune in that may be from other counties across the state, and that's okay. But there's a lot of different transition programs out there that are really designed to close the gap on some of that maturity that might be lacking, that might make them maybe not a great candidate for right now going to school, but kind of moving them in that direction for higher education. So we got trade school, community college, there's university degree programs, certificate programs, licensing programs. There's like get to work programs, like where we're like learning the hospitality industry or we're learning horticulture or things like that. And so really looking at all of those and one of those other programs might be a good first step to kind of see how that goes. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to go to a 4-year university or a 2-year university or a 2-year college later. But those are just all things to consider. So thinking about living at home versus on campus, our partnerships with other organizations, and we're going to talk about some of those today, to live on campus. There are, and we have a lot of times, like in our webinars, we're going to hit like highlights on some other topics. And most of the time, those highlights of those other topics are a whole webinar in itself, right? And so the one I'm about to mention, the Texas Workforce Commission Vocational Rehab, that is a whole webinar in itself, and our YouTube channel's in the chat box, and we'll have it at the end. But basically, all of our webinars, we do webinars on a weekly basis, and all of the webinars that we do are tied to special needs planning, transition, you name it, all titles, special needs. So we definitely do have one on Workforce Commission Vocational Rehab. But if you don't know, there's usually a liaison for your school, for your public school for vocational rehab. Texas Workforce Commission has big budgets. They're both state and federally funded. And vocational rehab is designed to help our kids that may have an impediment to employment, to help close those gaps to impediment to gainful employment. So not underemployment, not subpar minimum wage and some of these other programs and things that you may have seen, but it's true employment. So if you don't know about vocational rehab and your child is between the ages of 14 and 22, if they're over 22, there's still programs in the Workforce Commission for vocational rehab as well. It's just a different program. But if you've got kids ages 14 to 22 with a disability that is basically an impediment to an employment, Workforce Commission can really be helping you. Some of their funding might pay for some coursework. It might pay for some school. They do a lot of testing to find out what those impediments to employment are. And then they have there's like a whole plan and a whole program, and it's specifically tailored to that individual child and their needs. So anyway, just like to talk about that. So check out that webinar. And then thinking about a career path and ideal work settings. And again, the Workforce Commission is going to help with that as well. But I guess I am a fan of tapping in, and you're here today, so you're tapping into Partners Resource Network, right? And they have a lot of information. There's a lot of tools and resources out there for you that are free, and a lot of information that can help make your journey easier. Texas Workforce Commission transition into vocational rehab is one of those tools that you can put in your bag that might be helpful in all of these areas. Okay, so one of the things that that we basically always say is that we don't work for them and they don't work for us. Consolidated Planning Group is an independent firm, but there are a lot of post high school options and transition programs. We actually have a spreadsheet that has various areas. So if it's San Antonio, Austin, Houston, Dallas, whatever, right? That has some of the other transition programs out there. So so today when we send out the webinar, we'll go ahead and send out those lists and some other things that we're going to talk about. We'll include those in that email that we send out. But when it comes to some of the post-high school options for special needs day in transition, and I'm moving to college, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying what we know is that a lot of the families that we serve have kids that might go through a transition program, and it might be more effective than moving straight on to college. We do have families that have kids with disabilities that have crazy high IQs, right? And we also have families that have kids with disabilities that have intellectual disability and have lower IQ. We have people with ADHD, high functioning autism, maybe their maturity is 2 to 4 years behind their actual age. So these are all things to consider. And one of the things that we want to say here is that some of these transition programs can have very long waiting lists. We saw the waiting list get longer as they minimize some of their numbers with COVID, and I think they're getting back in the saddle. Some of them may have gone virtual, and they're kind of meeting and getting kind of back together in in person now. So so I did see something in the chat box about for the Dallas Fort Worth area, and yes, our the spreadsheet that we're going to send also will have the information for programs all across Texas, not just in the greater Houston area. So 6 traits that students with learning disabilities need to succeed. And this is something, honestly, you can Google this, like, what are some, definitive traits that individuals with disabilities need to succeed on the college level, okay? And so some of our kids are there, some of them aren't. One of it is self-awareness. So, the Goldberg study found that successful participants showed awareness of their strengths and weaknesses in both academic and non-academic areas. So some of our kids are doing really well in academic areas, but socially, they're very inept, right? So, where are they, and do they know what their weaknesses and their shortcomings are? And are they, are they accommodating those? Are they kind of flexing for those? Proactivity, proactively, this is where we're letting go a little bit. We're not so much of the helicopter parents that maybe we once were. Not that anybody is. I don't know, maybe it's just me anyway. So we're letting go a little bit. These kids are proactive. They take charge of their life. This is not this constant, like you're still having to wake them up. They don't get up on time. You're still like checking, they're in high school and you're still checking behind them for homework and things like that. Some of those things. So some of those things may never change, and it's kind of depending on the level and the type of disability that your child has is going to kind of dictate some of that. But perseverance and goal setting, and then presence and use of effective social support systems. Do they know where to get help? Do they know how to ask for help? If I'm struggling with something or if I'm having an issue, do I know where to get help, or do I expect my mother or my father to swoon in and smooth everything out and handle everything? And is there kind of a balance with that? And then we've got the emotional coping strategies, and that's a real issue. And honestly, the emotional coping strategies has been a growing issue since the pandemic. I mean, a lot of our kids have comorbid conditions, whatever their primary diagnosis is. A lot of times that goes hand in hand with anxiety, depression, some of these other things, a lot of other, alphabet soup in the mental health category. But how are they? Do they go from 0 to 100 of angry really quickly? How are they functioning? How do they have severe test anxiety? Do they have social anxiety? All of those things may be factors as we're thinking about this. Christy, do we have some questions? Or okay.
Not as of yet, Allison. Most of the stuff that I can address real quickly in the chat about recording, so forth and so on.
Okay, perfect. All right, so this is a big important slide right here. So accommodations and offices of disability on the college level. So first things first, this is super, super important. So in the school, in the public school, we've been having IEPs and 504s and ARD meetings and all that kind of stuff, right? To get our accommodations in place for our kids in the public school. And in the private school, they call it something else, but they usually have a plan in place. It's not called an ARD or whatever, but in the private school. But the first thing that you need to know is these accommodations and ARDs and IEPs and 504s, they don't transfer on the college level. They don't go to the university, they don't go to the college. And so there's certain requirements that you're gonna have to meet. So first things first, what you've got to know. So when you're thinking about college and higher education, whether it's a community college or whether it's a university, do your homework. So the way I would work this is I would first search the schools that I'm interested in that have the degree path or the program that might be a good fit for my child. And so I'm going to narrow down the list first by getting those colleges on the list. That's the first thing I'm going to do. Then the second thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to evaluate the offices of disability. So if I know that my child needs accommodations to be successful on the college level, I'm going to evaluate the Office of Disability. Offices of disability exist on every campus, on every college. They're not all created equally. Some are huge and they've got lots of software, lots of support, just really, really good. And some is a one-man show, right? And they have low budgets and they don't have some of the other resources that some of the other schools have. So educating yourself on, can the school truly support my student with a disability? What supports do they have in place? All of these colleges, basically on their website, they have a form to apply. You have to apply for disability services through the college or the university. You're going to want to check the requirements and be prepared early. So what we don't want to see is that kids are starting school and they don't already have their accommodations in place. Classes are starting and now we decide we need accommodations because they could be halfway into the semester before they get their accommodations, right? So this is a bad idea. So if you've got kids that are going to school in the fall, we've just been accepted and we're telling people where we're going or whatever, this is the time now, and between now and the summer is the time that you're getting all these accommodations set up, so that way when they pull the trigger and starting the semester, it's all straight. So here's the deal on the accommodations. How do we request accommodations? So most of them are going to ask for updated testing. You got to have proof of a disability. So this is going to be your neuropsych testing, learning disability testing. Sometimes they'll take the testing that the public school did. Most of the time they won't. But you got to have proof of the disability. What is the deficit and what are the accommodations needed? Most of the time they're asking for updated testing to be in the last 3 to 5 years. That's most of the time. So this is again where all universities are different and colleges are different. Maybe they'll say 2 years. It's usually not more, not less than 2 years, like it has to be in the last 12 months or something like that. It's not like that. We've seen them be a little bit more flexible with COVID because the testing was harder to get. Now, one thing that always comes up is, where do I get this testing done? So yes, sometimes the public school does this, most of the time they don't. Your local intellectual disability authority does testing. Your local children's hospital does testing. A lot of times your psychologist or psychiatrist office, if they don't do testing, they have a referral for someone who does do that testing. So make sure that you've got your test is showing. You might, if you have proof of an IQ score, proof of if they're dyslexic, proof of whatever it is that that they need help for. So another thing one of the takeaways that I will say too is you can also ask, if you have interaction with the Office of Disability, if they will accept older testing than 3 to 5 years, because this testing is expensive. I mean, you could be spending anywhere from $2,500 to $5,000 for this testing. It's usually not covered by insurance, depending on what the diagnosis is. So sometimes I got my kids covered because of the diagnosis. So it's possible that you could do that too. But when we're just trying to test for learning disabilities, it's typically not covered by our insurance. So it could be out of pocket. Texas Workforce Commission, that vocational rehab program, a lot of the testing that they usually do a vocational evaluation, and we also see that oftentimes they do the neuropsych evaluation, so it's possible that that testing could be covered by VR. You maybe had it done by VR if you're in that program, so just think about it that way as well. But one takeaway that I had, when we have a child with a permanent disability, it's not getting better, it's not getting worse, and they have a long history with a psychologist or a psychiatrist, asking the facility, will you take old testing if it's accompanied by a letter from our physician basically stating that they've followed this child this many years, that this is still the case, these are the accommodations needed. And we've heard a lot of the Office of Disability say yes. So it's just worth asking, and just knowing that if UT Dallas says yes, it doesn't mean that TCU is going to say yes. So you just got to keep asking. So SAT and ACT, AP exams, college courses, graduate level exams. That has been the bane of a lot of people's existence for a long time. So ACT and SAT, a lot of these schools, it's becoming choice on whether or not. So some schools clearly require the SAT and ACT if you're looking at UT or you're looking at A&M or things like that. Other schools have flexed their kind of relaxed their requirements for SAT and ACT. Just know that if you got a kid that has test anxiety and they're going to go to the community college first, the SAT and the ACT is not required for community college. There is something called the TSI, Texas Success Initiative, and that's basically the tests that they have to pass for 4 credit classes in reading, writing, and math. So if they can't pass the TSI, it's okay. They have non-credit courses that they can take that will help get them up to speed so they can take 4 credit courses. So just know, community college first. You don't have to worry about the SAT and ACT. If you're going to the university first, you need to check with that specific university and what their requirements are. And what they're doing with that. Again, because of COVID, the SAT and the ACT became harder to take. It wasn't easy, it wasn't pretty, and a lot of schools are moving away from it. There's some other things that other schools are looking at. Okay, so one thing that I want you guys to think about at the college level, so even if your child is starting college and they're 17 years old, the college doesn't have to talk to you as a parent. There is something that is basically called a FERPA, FERPA, FERPA. And so this is basically, you want to have a FERPA on file. You have to decide as a parent if you need this. Most of the families that we serve with kids with disabilities, it's a good idea to have the FERPA on file. So that way, if you do need to get involved, or that your child does need help, that the university or college will talk to you. So ask for the FERPA. It should be on the college website. If it's not, the Office of Admissions or any basic office of the university should be able to send you the FERPA. Your student will have to sign it. One thing that you need to know is if you plan to have guardianship of your child. If you plan to have guardianship of your child, you got to check with the school, because some schools will not take students that are under guardianship. So you got to know that, and you got to check into that. So such things as partial guardianship, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, full guardianship. Where we've seen that there could be issues is if you have full guardianship of a student. But there's a lot of programs out there that are designed for kids with disabilities, so they're a lot more accommodating. So we like to talk about a power of attorney because this is just a good document to have, whether you have kids with disabilities or you have kids that are neurotypical and they're going away to college. It's a good idea to have a power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney. The healthcare power of attorney would activate if they became incapacitated, but you could have the power of attorney that it becomes active on an incapacitation, or it becomes active immediately, and you can help. This is super important. And so we have seen some mental health crisis where a college student, 18 and older, had a mental health crisis. They were, admitted inpatient somewhere, and basically they will disclose nothing. So if you have no healthcare power of attorney, even though it's your kid and they're 18 years old, like you can't find out anything. You actually, if an ambulance picked them up and took them somewhere, they won't even tell you where they took them. So you could literally be looking all over town to figure out where your child was taken. So it's super, super important to have that. I don't want that to happen to you. We have seen that happen. So as far as going to work, reasonable accommodations are required if it does not pose undue hardship. One of the things that you guys can look at as well, if you're thinking about work, maybe not thinking about college, or a combination of you're thinking about everything, you're just trying to evaluate your options. The Department of Labor has registered apprenticeships that are available for individuals with disabilities, and they kind of take them under their wing and they really train them and they get paid and things like that. So look up apprenticeships if you haven't already, but there's a lot of programs out there that are out there to support individuals with disabilities. So definitely check it out. And these are more programs like if maybe a trade is appropriate. And a lot of these trades, like, I think a lot of families, we get hung up on a 4-year degree, and but a lot of these trades these guys are making a lot of money. I mean, they're getting, they're getting certified in plumbing or heating and air. There's a lot of, I would say that there's a lot of trades that are really, really right in line with an autism brain, and that they can be very, very successful. They can love what they're doing, and they can make a really decent living, and they don't have to go to school for 4 years. So think about those things too. It's okay. Is there a license? Is there a certification? Is there a certificate that could be helpful? So those are all things to look at. So here are some additional, and again, we are going to send an email, and we'll have a spreadsheet with some of the other programs, and they're going to talk deeper and wider. On our YouTube channel, we did have like a college panel, I think it was last year, and there was a lot of programs that are here on this list that basically got on and for 3 to 5 minutes said, here's who we are, here's who we serve, here's what we do, here's how much we cost. They kind of got on and did that. So that might be a good webinar to check out. So some of these, so there are places all across the state. There are also programs outside of the state, but here's what I need you to know about these programs that are specifically tailored for special needs. So they might be on the list because they have a program for individuals with disability. They also might be on the list because they have a good Office of Disability. We know they're good. So that might be why they're on the list. But some of these programs, like, Specific Path Program, Aggie Achieve, CASE Program, E4 Texas, any of these programs, steps, whatever it is, they may have only a few slots available. So you want to explore this early. You want to talk to them early and see how many slots that they're taking. And you might want to apply to multiple programs, because just because you apply doesn't mean that you'll get in. And so this is where the early bird gets the worm. And I always hate to bring this up, but what I would say is it was pretty overwhelming. I'm pretty good at this, and I again, I eat, sleep, and breathe this. But when I was going through this with my daughter, I felt like it was pretty overwhelming of all the information I had to know, and how different it was for each of the universities. I think that we were looking at like 10 or 12, right? And so here it goes. Create a spreadsheet, folks. It will help you. And so that way, you can have timelines, deadlines, what is the application date open up? When does it close? Are there scholarships available? As far as accommodations, or do we like that Office of Disability? So if you're evaluating more than one program, I'd strongly suggest a spreadsheet on that. How are we on questions, Christy? Are we okay?
We do have one. It's leaning towards the financial part of it. So I was kind of waiting to see when you would get into that. Do you want me to give it to you now, or do you want me to wait?
Go ahead and give it to me now. We're definitely going to go down that highway in just a second. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, so we have a gentleman that's saying that his daughter is 19 years old and is a senior in high school. We've begun the process with Texas Workforce Commission. She's been accepted to Sam Houston State and will be attending there in the fall of 22. Congratulations. We're basically wanting to focus on financial opportunities for her grants and scholarships. We don't seem to be competitive in regular opportunities due to our income and her GPA.
Okay, so yes, we are definitely going to talk about that. And I have a kid that's going to be graduating from Sam Houston, and I will say that their Office of Disability was fabulous. And so we definitely are going to talk about the money end of it, and how to kind of be creative and kind of be thinking about some of these things. So let's talk about out-of-state educational options post-high school. So there is a Think College. It basically features 309 colleges for universities that offer post-secondary education for students with intellectual disabilities. So use this website, check this out. I don't think it's like basically paid for, like, meaning like the schools paid for them to, like, promote them or something like that. I don't think it works like that, but there are a lot of good programs on here that you can check out. So just know that as a resource. Here's another lady, and we've partnered and we've done a webinar with her before, Jody Glau. She's an independent educational consultant, custom college consulting, and there are college consultants all across the state of Texas. She's actually not in Texas, but what I love about her is she is a specialist in finding schools that are appropriate specifically for your student with their learning challenges to find their best fit. And she has really invested in her business by touring these programs, by interviewing them, by being on campus. So she'll work with you and your student very individually to find the program that is the best fit. So if you don't have time for that, you would like to hire somebody to do that, she's your girl. She's definitely worth reaching out to. And I have had other families that have used her and that have been very, very pleased with her services. She definitely knows. She knows a lot about these schools all across the country. Now, of course, if you are, again, she knows about Texas too. She's just not in Texas, but a lot of the families that we serve are pretty nervous about the idea of students going out of state. I mean, sometimes we're nervous about the idea of in-state in a dorm anyway. But okay, so CLE, the college living experience, this is something else that you might want to check out too. So this kind of is an alongside program, and so they basically live there, the college living experience. They might go to the community college. They might go, in this example, they could go to, I believe it's Blinn, and I believe it's Texas A&M, where kind of they could go in Texas. CLE has programs, various programs across the United States, not just in Texas, but basically they're getting academic and career support, independent living skills, social development, and they're living in a community of peers, and then getting to their college or their university and things like that. So what I will say is, this sounds fabulous, right? Well, it's not free. So and you would have this alongside your college tuition or community college as well. But we have done a webinar with them too. They have a great website. You can certainly check them out. If that's something that's, in your budget or something that you're thinking about, people are definitely happy with CLE. One thing that I want to talk about too is the Bloom Consulting Campus Connections. Bloom Consulting is a website you should just go to. I'm just going to just tell you right off, because they offer a lot of services. But they have a campus connection program, and they do specifically have a program connected to Sam Houston State University. So for the comment on that, you might want to check into this program. This program is a lot more affordable than some of the other programs that we've seen at $1,000 a month, but it's basically designed to support your neurodiverse kids with various disabilities, and it's basically a peer mentoring wraparound planning process program, and they're helping your kids learn how to problem solve, how to communicate, how to advocate, all of those types of things. So this is a program that is definitely worth checking out. But Campus Connections, Bloom Consulting is also someone that has a partnership with the Workforce Commissions. So it is possible that you could be connected to VR and you could be connected to Bloom Consulting one way or another, and those services could be covered under your VR. Now, I'm not saying it's a slam dunk that every time it's going to be covered by VR. I'm not saying that. I don't work for VR. But if it's part of the the plan, the employment plan for your student, it could be covered. And of course, there are income guidelines as far as what they're going to cover and what they're not through VR. But this program is a good program. Bloom Consulting also does vocational evaluations. So they do a vocational evaluation through the Texas Workforce Commission for VR, but they also do them private pay. So if you were wondering, hey, what are my child's impediments to employment, they can do that assessment through them. So they have a lot of different services. They also have a group home in the greater Houston area. They are out there. Bloom is in, I'm trying to think, it's escaped me. It's basically outside of Austin. But they do a good job, and they work all across the state. So check them out, check their website out, see what services they have. They might be able to help you with that. So we've talked a lot about the vocational rehab, training and education. Anna Cluth, she's the student hireability navigator. We've got a phone number for her. So there's going to be information on workforce solutions. We talked about workforce commission and VR, vocational rehab. Workforce Solutions is your summer earn and learn program. It's the pre-employment training services. We've got services for our kids with disabilities that can help. The summer earn and learn program is kicking off. You can get your kids involved in that right now. They get a job. It's $10, and I think it's $10 an hour for 20 hours a week for 12 weeks. So it's a pretty good gig, if you're looking for employment for your kid. So this is just going to talk a little bit more about that, and I'm going to just keep going because I'm going to get to the things that matter. We're going to talk about funding. Are we still good on questions right now, Christy?
We did have one come. Do colleges receive any public funds for taking a certain number of special education students or special needs students? Are they incentivized in any way?
That's a great question, and I don't know the answer to that. I know like from a public school, like they get money for the IEPs and things like that. That's a great question. I do not know the answer to that. So thanks for asking. We'll check on that for sure. So the FAFSA, let's talk about funding, because that's a big thing. That's a big thing that weighs on everybody is the funding. How are we going to pay for this? Where are there scholarships? How can we go about, getting money or getting school paid for? So first of all, FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. It's available each year on October 1st. So if you've got, a kid that's going to school, you should have already done, if they're going to school in the fall, you should basically have already done your FAFSA. And if you haven't, you need to go in and do it. You have to create a parent account, and then there's a kid account. It's clunky. It's not the easiest thing to do. They're making it easier. But I talk to people every week. They're like, well, we're not doing the FAFSA because we clearly don't qualify for anything. We make too much money. You need to do the FAFSA regardless, because basically if you don't do the FAFSA, it's true that you may make too much money, but a lot of the scholarships require that you do the FAFSA. So if you don't do the FAFSA, you're automatically going to be excluded for the scholarship. Okay, so do your FAFSA. This is not a thing that we turn our kids loose with, just so you know. Your kids need you, whether they're neurotypical or special needs. They need you on this college process. I'm just telling you, it is a big job for a parent, and it's almost impossible for kids to navigate this. It is difficult. So the FAFSA is going to ask all about your financial information. It's got a tool to connect you to the IRS, to link up your tax returns and everything. So that's why you've got to do this. Get your favorite beverage, sit down for an hour or so and just get it done, knock it out. And you can save your progress too. So you can start it and you can save your progress and you can go back to it. But that is an important factor. So scholarships, community-based, school-based, disability-based, disease-based, sport, music, or band-based. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you a quick little story, really quick for me. So when we were, junior high, early high school, I thought, okay, let's see. So we're not going to be in the top 10% of our class. Our GPA is not going to be great. Well, we don't do band, sport, or music, so we're not getting scholarships like that. So I was just like, where are we getting the money from? Where is this money coming from? Let's be creative, And so I started researching early, what are the other scholarships? How can we go? What other scholarships are out there? How can we get this money? What if we have average grades, not great, but not bad. What if we don't test well and we have average SAT or ACT scores? How do we still get a scholarship? And the answer is volunteer. Volunteer and have a powerful story. So there are a lot of scholarships out there for service scholarships. Volunteering with meaningful organizations. And I'm not saying that your church isn't meaningful, but all the kids lie and say that they volunteer at their church. It's a big fat lie. You know, some of them do, but most of them don't, right? But so the colleges are hip to saying that they volunteer at church. But I'm talking about meaningful 4-year volunteering. So what is it? Is it a local vet? Is it, you know, what is it? What are they passionate about? Is it a homeless shelter? Is it a, you know, there's so many organizations out there that need volunteers, but that consistent, meaningful volunteering and those service hours, there's a ton of scholarships out there. The disability and disease-based scholarships is a big one that people overlook as well. There are a lot of scholarships out there for people with disabilities, disease-based scholarships, and I'm here to tell you there are even scholarships out there for your kids that are neurotypical because they have a sibling with a disability. Seriously. So look at these scholarships. And so what I would say, here's the other spreadsheet you need. I would say choose wisely, okay? So for me, so you could be you know, a mad woman or a madman, you know, selecting these scholarships that you're going to apply for. And some of these scholarships that are going to give you $250, their application is just as difficult and long and ridiculous as the one that's going to give you $25,000, right? So when I say choose wisely, I was just like, no, it's too little. It's too little. That buys one book, you know, like, you know, because you only have so much time. There's only so much hours in the day. And again, there's a lot of things that your kids can and should be doing in this process. There's also a lot of help. So one thing that I will say, as far as applying and your applications and stuff like that, get your kids writing their essays the summer before they're going to graduate. So the summer before their senior year. So it's the summer. In the fall, they're starting classes and they're going to be a senior in college. Have them write their essays in the summer. It was painful. You can get the essay prompts. You can Google and find out what the essay prompts are. Typically have them write 3 essays and then they can easily edit them. There are services out there that will review the essays, will work with your student to correct them. Do not write your essays for your kids. The college admissions people are totally hip to that and they don't like it. So let your kid write their essays, maybe hire somebody to review them or whatever, but get them to write them in the summer. I'm going to tell you, we did this and there were tears at my house. There were tears. It wasn't great, but you know what happened? Senior year started and she was ready. She had her essays. We knew exactly when we were applying for college. We knew exactly when we were doing the FAFSA. We knew exactly what scholarships we were applying for. And guess what? The essays were ready. So all we had to do is upload them. Really easy. Instead of we start our senior year and all the busy stuff is going on with senior year and you're trying to write essays and you're trying to do all this other full-time job stuff. So it's just good advice. So 529 college savings plans, ABLE accounts, those are all things that can pay for college. So we know about the 529 college savings. ABLE accounts, again, ABLE account, if it can be construed as achieving a better life for an individual with a disability, it can be paid for out of an ABLE account. So unlike a 529C, we're basically paying for higher education out of a 529C. A 529A could pay for tutoring, it could pay for a transition program, it could pay for college and any other number of things. So one thing I just want to mention here is if you have a 529C for your child with a disability, and you're not sure if that child is going to go to college, you can convert your 529C $16,000 a year to a 529A without penalties, so you can still get the money out for the use of that said child without taxes and penalties. So just know about that. We've kind of already talked about the vocational rehab. So what about scholarships? So one thing that I want to tell you is if you have an adopted child through the state of Texas, okay, not other states or whatever, Texas has a program, the DFPS system, and so they've been a part of that foster care system in the past. Those kids are going to go to college for free at not Texas State, but in-state Texas universities, not private universities. So just know about that. There's a waiver for these kids and it's free. And I've actually been surprised that people didn't know that that was a real thing. So do check that out. Ask for a list of scholarships from the child life specialist at the specialty clinic that you go to, whoever it may be, if it's Texas Children's, Baylor, whoever your major hospital is. Check that out, and the child life specialist usually has something that they know of specific scholarships that are available for your loved one and their specific disability. So here are some of the scholarships that you can look at and look for. I personally did not pay for any scholarships. There's some scammy stuff out there when you start looking for a scholarship, so be careful with that. I know that the rodeo has big scholarships as well, so that may be something that you want to look at as well. How are we on questions, Christine? Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is one that is near and dear to my heart, and this is the one that I figured out. And I figured out, hey, this is what we want to do, right? Okay, so the Terry Scholarship, the Terry Foundation, has been around since 1987. It's the single largest provider of private scholarships in Texas for Texas high school graduates. Okay, so basically what this scholarship is, it basically pays for their four-year university, and the following universities on the right are who it pays for. And so what they're looking at is scholastic record and ability. They don't have to be in the top 10. They can have average grades. Sometimes they're looking at the financial need, but basically what they're looking at is leadership, potential, and character. What is your kid's story? Does your kid have a powerful story? Have they been through heck and back and they are still standing and they give back to their community? They're looking for service, service work, service hours. But so you could actually, depending on how many universities that you're applying for, you could apply for this Terry Scholarship at all of those universities. So you don't just apply once. It's what university that you're applying to, and if they have the Terry Scholarship, and each time you apply for that Terry Scholarship through the various universities, that's increasing your chances of being selected to be a Terry Scholar. The cool thing about this, so a lot of scholarships out there, they have unrealistic expectations for students to have a 4.0 GPA to maintain the scholarship, so they get it for the first semester and then they lose it. This is a 4-year scholarship, and I think it's basically a C average that they need to maintain to not lose this. And you can check this out on their website. But for the gentleman from the Terry, the older man, he's deceased. He wasn't a great student, so he didn't want to make this scholarship to where it was so unattainable that people couldn't keep it. So anyway, this is really, really good. And it's a great program, and for kids that maybe they don't have any of the other, some of the band or sports or whatever, but they have average grades, average test scores, a powerful story, and they have given back to their community, service hours, volunteer hours, and a significant amount. And so what I would say is get them volunteering. There's all kinds of organizations out there. Get them volunteering early. So if you're a freshman, sophomore, pick up now and really get those service hours up, because that's what's going to get you the scholarship. All right. So again, I'm not going to go through these, like word by word, but we have like scholarships that are listed for specific diagnoses. And if your diagnosis isn't on here, think of every diagnosis. If you have multiple diagnoses, Google that. Look for scholarships specifically for those, because a lot of those scholarships people don't look for, and a lot of them have money that they didn't give away because not enough people applied. So just realize that there are some programs out there that are like that are definitely worth checking into. So same thing, we've got learning disability scholarships as well. Basically, if you can think of a diagnosis, there's a scholarship for it. So these are just all some of the ones that you can check out. And this is my point. There's so many of them out there. Choose wisely. Choose the bigger ones as opposed to the smaller ones. Make your time and your effort as far as these applications worth it. And just make sure that you're paying attention to the deadlines. Now, one thing that I found very interesting, because most people think that at Christmas break, so your kid starts college, starts high school as a senior in the fall, most people think at Christmas break, they're going to do the FAFSA, they're going to do those essays that I was talking about, they're going to do those scholarship applications. That is wrong thinking. And the reason it is a lot of these scholarships, now a few of them will have deadlines such as February, March, and April. A lot of the scholarship deadlines are on or before December 15th. A lot of them are December 1st. I've seen November 15th. So seriously, your child is a senior in high school and you're thinking about, doing this in December, and you start looking in December and you realize you've already missed all the deadlines. So this is where it comes in and preparing early, and how important it is for that. So these are just a lot of them. Just check them out. And, and this is a good weekend project. It's like we, kind of overwhelm you with all these links for colleges. Some of the books to consider, colleges that change lives. There are a lot of schools out there that are known for working with kids that learn differently. So that might be a book that you want to check out. We've got the Fifth Guide to College. These are all books that you can get on Amazon. And some of these, if you don't want the book, hire a consultant. They know these things, right? So let's go to questions, Chrissy. We have some additional questions.
Most of the questions I think you have answered. There have been a couple of questions in the chat about how soon should I start planning or start looking at options, high school or middle school. And I kind of responded saying that it's never too early to start looking at options. So I don't know if you want to elaborate on that one. Other than that, everything is pretty much good, Allison.
So I would just say early, the sooner the better. And I think so ultimately my story is that we had a big win. Okay. So a child with a disability who worked really hard, but average scores, decent grades, average scores, and not any of the other elitists that we were talking about, right? But we planned early. And we got her volunteering, and she had 900 service hours by the time she graduated high school. So between junior high and high school, 900 service hours. And we volunteered, for instance, with organizations such as the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. She ran for Student of the Year. She raised money for them. She volunteered for an organization called Hope for Three, which was an autism organization. She was basically a big sister, where they had like a night where they families brought their kids to get babysit so they could have kind of a respite night, right? There's the Dream League. You could volunteer for the Dream League. There's and in our area we have a youth in philanthropy. There's a lot of programs and a lot of organizations that your kids can get volunteering. And so for me, I was just real with our situation and said, okay, we're not getting this, and this. So what can we get? Right. And so we were very intentional. So I think the word is intentional. Be intentional. We created our spreadsheets. We had our plan and we worked our plan, and she ended up getting like 12 scholarships, but she got that Terry Foundation scholarship, which was basically a full ride, and it paid for everything. And so of the scholarships that she got, we ended up giving 9 of them back because she was fully funded. Right. And so with being intentional, having time to research some of these things. There are people that you can hire that, can do some of this work. They're usually pretty expensive for you, but being intentional, starting early and really focusing on what are their strengths. And it's not about, when it comes to volunteering and service hours, it's not about how can I get them volunteering at everywhere, right? But how can they have 3 or 4 relationships where they have meaningful volunteering for 3 or 4 years with this particular organization? Because what happens is when your children volunteer and they have that meaningful volunteer, they have made relationships with the directors of these agencies, with the directors of the programs. And when it comes time for that letter of recommendation, I mean, honestly, I have to tell you that the letters of recommendation that these places wrote for my daughter after she served so much, I couldn't have wrote them better myself as her mother. I was like, they were amazing. And so your kids are going to have that too. If they're truly volunteering, they're truly giving back in their community. It's good for a number of reasons, not just giving back in their community, but also they're around other peers their age. They're making friends. There's value in giving back that feels good to the human spirit. So all this, black cloud of depression and anxiety and all this other stuff that everybody's got going on, since COVID, it kind of helps those things. And it's going to help the college application process as well. So, all right, Christy, do we have any additional?
Yes, ma'am. We have one that says, are you aware of any summer bridge programs that special needs kids may attend as a preparation for the fall semester?
That's a good question, and I think that would have to be directed to each one of these programs that are out there, because some of the colleges may have a summer bridge program, but I think some of the transition programs also may have a summer bridge program. Now, a couple of things I do want to mention, and I didn't put it on the slides here today, so I am actually glad that you said that. We know of a couple of things and this will be on our spreadsheet too, but there's a program in Monarch Institute has a transition program. It's in Houston. Advanced Houston has a transition program. There's a place in Massachusetts, it's called Dynamy, and it's like a gap year for our kids that aren't really ready yet, but they're kind of living semi-independently in an apartment with like 3 roommates and basically a house mom or something like that. But so there's some gap year programs that you can look at. There are gap year programs for individuals with disabilities. So some of these are these transition programs. I haven't seen big college transition, programs. I see the transition program, but not with an emphasis on college. Most of the colleges do, and they may have kind of taken somewhat of a break from this with COVID, but most of them do have a summer camp. It's usually a week long. It's kind of a, I don't know if you called it induction or whatever. It's kind of an introduction, and most of these do have a camp, but they do have limited seats. You do have to pay for it. It's not free. And so this is, again, where you have to be on their website, check this out, ask the questions, because I didn't find any information really forthcoming, right? I felt like I had to dig for this on their website, and then it wasn't there, and I had to call and ask. Those are, these are all great questions, but because and this was the frustrating part to me, is because it's not uniform, right? Because it's not the same everywhere. It's you feel like you're beating your head against the wall, but it's kind of how it works. I did see another question about directing child support to a first-party special needs trust. And this is a whole other topic, but the bottom line is our kids with disability, most of us make too much money. They didn't qualify for SSI and Medicaid prior to turning 18. It's a good probability that they will qualify for SSI and Medicaid when they do turn 18. In the state of Texas, if you got divorced, a lot of times child support continues post age 18 for individuals with disabilities. Not always. I'm not an attorney. I didn't get to pick your case, but a lot of times it continues. If it continues, if you've got child support that's going to be continuing past age 18 for your individual with disability, it's important to get that child support directed to a first-party special needs trust, or that child support is going to be counted against your loved one as income. Even though it's coming to you, it's going to be counted as income to them as it relates to SSI and Medicaid. We have whole presentations on this. You can take it offline. You can check in with me. I can help you with this. But basically everything on the list here, the things that should be on your special needs planning radar, we have webinars in every single one of them. We have past webinars that live on our YouTube channel. We have future webinars on these topics that'll be coming up that you can join in the future. So we'll be glad to partner with you on that. If you serve an organization that needs some webinars, you can reach out to my team, and they can get those scheduled as well. And this is my team. So I always, I a lot of times I'm the voice and do these webinars, but I am certainly supported by an awesome team behind me. We are nationally certified as Social Security advisors. We're also special needs members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. So we're just very nuanced in special needs. That's what we do, and so depending on kind of where you are in the planning journey, we have some kids that we know are going to need care for the rest of their life, not just ours. We've got other kids that are sometimes late to the party. They're late, but they are where they are. They're not behind. But we're still hopeful and optimistic they're going to get there. But we have people that contact us all the time and say, I just want to plan. I don't know what the future is going to hold. I want to plan for the worst, hope for the best. I need some help on these things. And a lot of times we have people that come to us that have big confusion with SSI and Medicaid and how to get that ball rolling, or they've already got the ball rolling and it's a train wreck and they've got all kinds of issues and letters and weird things happening with the Social Security Administration. They need some help with that. So we can certainly help you with that. But future care cost estimate, Social Security analysis is super important, and that's something that we can help you with as well. When we have a child with a disability whose disability started prior to age 22, they are eligible to be listed under our Social Security, our work record, basically, for benefits in the future. So if a child's disability started prior to age 22. So it's important that you know all of these things, because how and when as a worker that you pull the trigger on your own retirement and Social Security matters. It matters if you have more than one special needs kid. It matters if you have a spouse that has been the primary caregiver or homemaker. Maybe the spouse didn't work and they're going to be drawing off of a spouse's record. All of these things really matter, and we can definitely help you with those. So certainly reach out. Our consultations are always free. So if you have, personalized questions that you want to talk to us about, we certainly will be happy to talk to you. Any additional questions before we wrap up? I think we're right on time. Yes, we are.
Yes, ma'am. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll. So guys, before you log off, please, if you could take the poll for the evaluation, Allison and I will address the last question, but while she's doing that, I'm launching the poll so you can do the evaluation. So this is a question that came through, Allison, that says, and I think it's a good way to kind of end the talk, because it just kind of brings us back to the thought of this person wants to know, kids with IEP goals, do they have an opportunity to go to college? I say absolutely, positively, yes, the opportunity is there based on what you've told us today, but I figured that's something you might want to weigh in on also.
So yes, I mean, I think that they do have the opportunity to go to college, and I think that is, and if that message didn't come loud and clear, I want it to. It is completely possible. There are programs out there, very intentional programs, to get our kids where they need to go. And just because they may have had some struggles, there are many, many people that have graduated from college that have master's degrees, PhDs, all of the above. There are a lot of programs out there. There are offices of disabilities that the sky is the limit. So don't feel like that you're gloom and doom. There's so many programs out there, but what your key as a parent is what program fits. Is your child going to fit in a university with a good office of the disability and not a specific program? And that's where we were talking about, where is that right fit? Is it a traditional path or a non-traditional path? Sometimes it's a non-traditional path first, and then it becomes a traditional path because we're kind of graduating up to that point. There's no magic number. Your child doesn't have to graduate college at 22. So what if they're 32? What if they're 28? It doesn't matter. And so I think that's where, again, we have to kind of talk to ourselves and bring ourselves back to the reality of where are they and how can we meet them where they are, and what are those programs out there, and what program might be a good fit specifically for my child. And that's where that research comes in, and we're going to spend time looking, at those various programs, or the consultant can really help you, narrow it down. So if you say, I don't have time to narrow this down, hire the consultant, let them narrow it down for you. They're going to get to know your kid, and they're going to say, here's the 5 or 10 programs I think you should look at, so that you can definitely get help that way. One last question, and I know we've got to go. Where can I find the Texas waivers, the waivers list? We have a whole presentation on our YouTube channel on Texas waivers. there is a website where you can put in your zip code and it will tell you who your local intellectual disability authority, LIDA or LIDA, LIDDA. So your local intellectual disability authority is where you get on the waivers list. There is a class number, but in that presentation for the waivers, the phone number is out there for class, the locator for your local authority where you can get your name on the list for that. Navigate Life Texas is a good website, and it will talk about what all of the waivers are, the various waivers that are available. So those are all good places that you can get that information. And if you need additional information, you can certainly reach out. So thanks so much, everyone. Oh, sure.
I'm sorry, Allison. We have one last come in on the chat. Do any of the waiver programs that you've talked about or know about help with college?
I haven't seen them help with college, no, but I have seen the vocational rehab program through the Workforce Commission help with college or certificate programs or training and things like that. So I definitely have seen that program, and it is going to depend on your income. And you don't have to be indigent, but if you make a lot of money, they're probably not going to offset, your expenses. But they have a whole formula and they calculate that. So I would check with them for sure.
All right, well, Allison, that looks like it. It looks like the chat's quieted down and there's no more questions in the Q&A. So thank you again for joining us. I know we'll have you guys back again in May, so I'm excited about that. So yeah, thank you for joining us, and all the chats, comments have been great. Thank you very much. Wonderful information. Enjoyed the conversation. So yeah, thanks for coming, Allison.
I just want to say that the YouTube channel, I think this is a link on here, on the webinar. There's a link here. It's in the chat box, but it's Consolidated Planning Group. The YouTube channel is Consolidated Planning Group, so you can find it out there. So thanks so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon, and we look forward to joining you again soon. Take care.
Bye. And everyone else that's still here with us, thank you very much for joining us today. You obviously received the email or the flyer, and it has my contact information on it. If you have any other questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me. I will be glad to help you or put you in contact with your regional coordinator. Also, I threw in the chat earlier today that we do have youth leadership activities. So, that's something that you could look into when she was talking about those potential leadership qualities. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us at Partners Resource Network, and have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.